My name is Asha Liang, and my purpose is to help individuals live their version of sexual liberation in the world. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about Global Desires, my dream project.
I know the power in telling our personal stories, in shedding light into the dark spaces in our hearts, how we can take what we've survived and lived through and write that down and share it with people, and how it transforms us in our healing, in our passion, in the way in which we walk in the world.
Vals para Brent, a Brent Corrigan. Ceniciento, blanco príncipe para recostar sobre pétalos de seda. Trompudo, delicado para beber y beberme de besos en flor. Con caricias festejar la vida, creyéndonos frutas apareándose.
In America, our vision of social justice is much too narrow. It doesn't account for the effects of capitalism and globalization, which we have exported around the world.
For me, personally, doing any sort of organizing domestically without an international connection just doesn't make sense. I feel like any work that's true work in community organizing will have a tie to international activists, will have a tie to international community, and we'll use those voices in our domestic organizing process.
So I traveled around the world for a year and I visited 21 countries. While I was traveling, I conducted oral history interviews talking to local people about what sex and gender looks like in their lives and cultures.
So in the past year, I visited the United States, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, India, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, China, Macau, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. The most important part of these travels to me was that I had a project, that I had a dream, that I wanted to talk to people all over the world about what sex and gender looks like in their culture and their country. And luckily, I did get an opportunity to talk about it with many really brave, amazing, courageous people all over the world. Global Desires was able to travel to Honduras, where we visited with Darwin Bajarona from Tegucigalpa. Here are some of the quotes from Darwin's interview. It's very materialist here. People see American girls, the first thing they think is porn films from America. And they have this fantasy. Every time they see a gringa, they think drugs, sex, and rock and roll. The first time I masturbate, no one says anything to me. My family at that time was traditional outside, but inside was damaged. My first time was in the toilet. I played with my cock and see crazy stuff. I go to school and say, "Hey man, I found something really amazing." And my classmates start to laugh at me. Here are some of the quotes from Sally's interview. When I was a young sexual being, it was all about free love, and you had to fuck anyone because we're all brothers and sisters under the sun. Some of those hippie men were wonderful. My friend went out with a guy who was a singer and he wanted to fuck her and she said no. Then he started to attack her, saying, "What's wrong with you? Have you been raped or something?" There was a lot of that dynamic still around. Sexually, that men were the aggressors and women followed. You weren't allowed to say no because something was wrong with you if you didn't want to sleep with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It meant you didn't want a free society. Here are some of the quotes from Jean's interview. Because of the internet, everyone downloads the L word illegally. That's our only way because of all the censorship. Government owns all the media, the TV, radio, and newspapers. Anything gay is censored. Thank God for the internet. They can't censor the internet. Lots of young people are watching everything online. Showed two lesbians kissing and the cable television show got fined for it. The only time you see a gay character is when a character dies of AIDS, is abused, or dies. You can't portray a positive gay character. Singapore is the place where the religious right comes because we're not a Muslim country in Southeast Asia and we speak English. When the religious right is losing in the United States, then they focus on exporting their messages to other countries. The moment they started losing Prop 8, they started to flow the money to Asia and Africa, which is disturbing. Here are some of the quotes from Lainey's interview. You hear stories of experimenting and sex parties, but nothing is out in the open. You could have a friend who throws sex parties, but who would never tell you. It's like if you're in, you're in. Until our religious politics go away, our political parties will keep trying to one-up each other by being more homophobic. In Malaysia, politicians are seen as people of authority rather than service, so they are taken very seriously. Very early on, my mother first initiated the conversation when I was 6 by giving me a book about where babies come from, and gave me a personal talk about what areas of your body people can't touch, even if they're an uncle. It's protected me a lot to have these talks emotionally and physically. I was touched inappropriately, but always knew it was not my fault. Here are some of the quotes from Saron's interview. I found man struggles if you're born in the culture to control women. Culture says women have no need to talk to neighbors, women should not go out at nighttime, women should produce children, as many as you can. Men have another role. Men can enjoy social activity, drinking, going outside. Men can learn a lot of stuff, and women can't. The government wants to control people. They know Cambodian people believe in Buddha, so they play the culture and the norms to control people. The culture forgets about LGBT people. They isolate LGBT community.
So, after traveling 21 countries in the past year, what I learned is that we're all facing the same issues. We're facing misogyny and homophobia and patriarchy and transphobia and basic issues of whether we have access to our bodies, whether we get to make decisions about our lives, and whether our sexual desires and dreams could even have a place in this world.
So this is my idea. It's called Global Desires. I'd like to use all of the interviews that I gathered over the past year as kind of a baseline template. And I want to create a website where people can come and self-interview themselves about sex, gender, their desires, what life looks like for them wherever they live.
It's time to crowdsource this. These interviews can then be translated into English and hopefully also translated into other languages. Everything we collect can then be reused in ways that foster education and communication.
I just know once we have a critical mass of these stories, that some magic's gonna happen.
I would like to collect the most powerful, most important stories that come through the site and turn them into a book. I would also like to take the same material and turn it into a traveling exhibit where people can literally walk through an art exhibit and read our sexual stories and see our faces. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to cross-pollinate, that community organizers who are working on important social justice issues can start to have conversations, not only domestically, but also internationally, about the impact of these important social justice issues in our lives, the specifics of what that looks like, and how we bring our most powerful selves to our work. So who are we? Well, there's me, Asha Leong, and there's everyone that I've had the great privilege to be in touch with over the past year.
Some people were part of nonprofit organizations or faith communities. Others were just individuals willing to speak their truth.
And we've been building a small collective of people from around the world who are really going to be holding the big picture when it comes to global desires.
Getting the website up and going, laying the framework for what publishing a book will look like, picking the stories and people who will be profiled in a traveling exhibit, talking to researchers and academics about how the data in our website can be useful to their research. I also hope that we'll be able to get regional groups of volunteers. So people who have a focus of Europe or Southeast Asia or Africa or Central America, who are from these countries and able to really both do outreach in the area to drive people to the website for interviews, but also review the interviews that are coming in.
And thinking about how it can be used locally in social justice campaigns, or perhaps we'll develop, regional specific books and exhibits, or country specific books and exhibits. There's a lot of ways in which Global Desires can grow in the years to come.
I believe that there is healing available to us in the world.
I believe that there is power in the earth, air, fire, and water around us,
present in our very spirits, stories, and connection to one another.
I hope you heard something that is inspiring to you. This project is deeply inspiring and powerful to me, and I really hope that you will support it any way that you can.
Together, we are creating a world in which living sexually liberated lives is not a fantasy, but a reality around the globe.